Hi, Victor. How have traditional document processing systems tried to understand documents?
So prior to the use of NLP and AI in these kind of workloads, AI and document processing and even intelligent document processing systems have existed. And much like everything that sort of predated AI, it was a bunch of like, if this, then that kind of workflows. So it's very rules based. You can go down this path of, if I see this sort of word, if the third preceding word was this, I mean this kind of intent. So it's really clunky and arduous code to like put together and get through. And it makes it so that it really isn't a portable system in a sense. It's very specific to the kind of content or text that you were talking or writing about, because it mostly just lacks semantic understanding of all of that content. So imagine that you write a rule for pharmaceuticals. So it's very specific to the pharmaceutical industry and the way that they write their documents, their invoice, whatever it is that they're writing. You can imagine that there's usual way of saying things and a usual technical writing that goes into pharmaceutical documents that is very different from like the banking industry, let's say. So if you've done a very good job in understanding some pharmaceutical stuff, it's really unusual that it would work well in the banking industry or in a legal industry or in insurance, let's say, right? So you get to a place where you have to keep building new and new sets of rules for all of these documents, which makes it unwieldy and really kind of like very difficult for the vendor company or the people who are producing the technology. And it most often leads to really poor accuracy. So your systems can get good and can get accurate, but it takes so long that if you were to buy an off-the-shelf system like this, you probably don't get any return on your investment for a long time. The other problem with these types of old school systems is that because they don't generalize the knowledge and they're very specific to an industry or a type of contract even, they fail miserably in the world of contracts and legal documents. So that language is very specific and you might train only for that, that's fine, but then you're training, again, you'd be training in a specific part of the legal world or a specific part of the contract world. So it's just like master service agreements is very general. So you probably can't train on that. You probably have to go down to a specific kind of invoice and do a rules-based version of that. So that, again, it becomes like a lot of work. With NLU, you just generally get full text understanding and all the way through to semantic understanding. So imagine that the old school world, and this is an analogy that probably hits home for a lot of people. The old school world is like when we used to do internet searches with things other than Google. So imagine the worlds of like the time of Lycos or Ask Jeeves. If you're not old enough to know those words, just Google them because it's hilarious. Google them because you'll figure out what they are. In that world, you sort of put things up and hopefully something relevant came up. Google really flipped on its head with really an algorithm based around understanding, but it still doesn't understand your text. Now look at today's world with large language models such as GPT-3, ChatGPT. Google has their own version as well. You're looking at a much broader understanding of all these things. So if you're asking a question in an interface like OpenAI's ChatGPT, you're going to get a much better answer than you will with just a Google search, which is going to give you a link to something else. They do some snippets of understanding, but it's still like from, if my website was the authority figure, it's a snippet from my website rather than, it does not generate its own knowledge in a sense. So there you go, from rules-based all the way through like semantic understanding.